Hello and welcome to Key Review 1, Communication Competence and Process. There are 3 criteria for communication competence. Effective communication requires meeting specific criteria to ensure messages are both impactful and appropriate. A message is competent when it successfully aligns with all 3 elements. It needs to be understood as intended, it needs to achieve the intended effect, and it needs to be ethical. First, understood as intended. The receiver interprets your message the way that you meant it. Second, achieves the intended effect. In other words, the message accomplishes your goal to inform, to persuade, or to build rapport. And last, is it ethical? Is it honest, fair, respectful, and responsible? Here are the components for the communication process: source, encoding, message, channel, receiver, decoding, noise, feedback, and context. Let's start with source. So, source is the originator with an idea or feeling to communicate. Encoding is turning ideas and feelings into symbols like words, tone, gestures, or visuals. The message is the content comprising spoken, written, or unspoken elements that convey meaning. The channel is the pathway the message travels, such as face-to-face, text, or video. Receiver is the person or people who get the message and make sense of it. Decoding is the process of interpreting the symbols back into meaning. Noise is any interference that prevents accurate message reception. This could be external, psychological, or physiological. The receiver's response that indicates understanding or misunderstanding is called feedback. Context is the environment shaping meaning, including physical, historical, or psychological aspects. So to review, the components of the communication process that you need to know are source, encoding, message, channel, receiver, decoding, noise, feedback, and context. There are 3 models of communication. We have the action or linear model, the interaction or two-way model, and the transaction or simultaneous model. Action or linear model is a model that views communication as a simple one-way transmission from source to receiver. A message is sent and received, but there's no built-in feedback mechanism. Interaction is a two-way model. This model adds feedback and context to the process, showing communicators taking turns sending and receiving messages. Communication is still viewed as a series of step-by-step exchanges. And our last model is the transaction model, or simultaneous model. In this model, communicators are simultaneously both sender and receiver. Meaning is co-created within a given context and emits various types of noise. This model best reflects the dynamic nature of real-time conversation. So to review, we have the action or linear model, the interaction or two-way model, and the transaction or simultaneous model. The characteristics of communication we're going to cover next. It's inescapable, it's irreversible, it's complicated, it's governed by rules, and it has both content and relationship dimensions. First, it's inescapable. You can't not communicate. Silence, posture, and appearance always send messages. Irreversible. Once a message is sent and received, it can't be taken back. Complicated. Multiple variables like language, culture, perceptions, and channels affect every exchange. Governed by rules. Explicit rules and implicit norms guide what's appropriate in any given communication situation. It's both content and relationship. Every message contains both the literal content, in other words, what is said, and relationship meaning, in other words, how it's said and what it implies about the relationship. So to review, communication is inescapable, irreversible, complicated, governed by rules, and both content and relationship. I like to think of this, as Kenneth Burke said, as equipment for a living. This is the preview of communication principles for a lifetime, and there are 5. Be aware of your communication with yourself and others. Effectively use and interpret verbal messages. Effectively use and interpret nonverbal messages. Listen and respond thoughtfully, and appropriately adapt messages to others. So the first one is be aware of your communication with yourself and with others. This means monitoring self-talk, emotions, and the impact you're having with your communication. Effectively use and interpret verbal messages. Choose clear, accurate, audience-appropriate words and avoid bias and ambiguity. Effectively use and interpret nonverbal messages. Align eye contact, facial expression, posture, and tone with your intent. Listen and respond thoughtfully. Attend, paraphrase, ask questions, and give feedback that shows understanding. Appropriately adapt messages to others. Adjust content, language, and delivery to the audience, the purpose, and the context. So to review, our communication principles are: be aware, effectively use and interpret verbal messages, effectively use and interpret nonverbal message, and listen and respond thoughtfully. And finally, appropriately adapt messages to others.